Hey, are we good now? All right. We'd like to welcome you all to the Provo Municipal Council meeting agenda, and it is 5:47, Tuesday, February 6th, 2024. Our elected officials today, we have Councillor Gary Garrett, Councillor Craig Christensen, Councillor George Handley, myself, Catrice McKay, Councillor Rachel Whipple will be back, Councillor Becky Bogdan, and we have the Mayor, Michelle Kafusi. We also have Travis Hoban on Zoom. The opening prayer will be given today by Priscilla Flores. And while she's walking up here, we have a high school student council. And it was fun. We had dinner with them tonight, and they are here for the council meeting. Priscilla.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful because we can be here today. We ask Thee that the Spirit can be with us, that He can guide us, and that everything can go according to how You wish. We ask Thee that everything can go well, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Priscilla. The Pledge of Allegiance will be provided by Councillor Gary Garrett.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a presentation of the quarterly report for the first quarter of 2024, and this will be presented by John Borgett, our Director of Administrative Services.
Thank you, Chair McKay and Honorable Council. It's a pleasure for me to present the quarterly report for the first quarter of 2023. Just want to mention a little bit about what the purpose is of the report. Scroll here. I don't know if there we go. Okay. Okay, that's where I want to be. Sorry about that. The quarterly report is intended to give an unaudited summary information to the, thank you, appreciate it. She turned it on. I should know how to do that. The quarterly report is intended to give an unaudited summary information to the reader about Provo City's revenues and expenses for the first quarter of fiscal year 24 ended September 30th. The report contains financial data comparing previous year expenditures to current year actual revenues and expenditures, along with a 5-year comparison for each fund. No data on revenue and expenditures is final until we've completed our annual audit, which happens at the end of the fiscal year. I would just mention that this year in particular, administration we've been looking at revenues very closely. We had, when we started getting sales tax information for this year, we noticed that we were down from what we had budgeted and also similar to the prior year. And so we've been watching it very closely and meeting. And so some of the information I'm going to share with you, I'm going to give you a little bit of a 6-month update because that's a lot more current information, just so that you have an idea and a sense for where we're at. We have been looking at some different things. I would just mention, we've been looking at self-balancing, areas where we can look at expenses and balance our expenses with those revenues. Also, we have been meeting in our director meetings, which is the first Tuesday of each month. We give the directors an update, we talk, we evaluate, and we try to look at how things are going. And so I'll try to share that as we go on, but just wanted to let you know that we have been watching and monitoring it very closely. We want to give the council an update. So I'm going to go right to here. Our overall revenues, it's interesting when you look at it on a chart and you got large dollars, everything looks good, you know. Looks like our revenues are equaling our budgeted revenues as well as the prior year. But I'll just let you know that 6 months through 6 months of the year, and actually 5 months of sales tax data, we right now are forecasting to be about $2 million down for the year. And so we have been looking at some things that can help. And I would just say that administration, we are on it, and we are working, and we are managing and working towards a balance. So just make you aware of that. Transfers were pretty close to budget, and so not really an issue there. If you look at our sales tax revenue, I want to give you a little bit of a sales tax update. We just recently received our sales tax information for November, which includes, it's the start of the holiday season. We know it includes Black Friday as well as Cyber Monday. And the good news is that we were up 13% from the prior year for our November sales. We're actually 5% for that month over for the budget. So that was really positive. One of the things that we're going to be watching very closely is that in just a couple of weeks away, around the 20th of February, we should get the December sales. And so we'll be anxious to see how those numbers come in. A lot of times it can be said that your annual sales tax revenue budget is, you kind of either make or break it with the holiday sales because it's a big part of it. And so we're waiting and seeing. And then when we meet as a director and a management team in February, we're going to kind of plan accordingly. I would also mention that we've met with each of the departments, and they've came back as a team approach and have looked at efficiencies and potential budget saving ideas that can help if we wind up having a gap that we need to cover for. And so we're going to kind of wait until February, our February meeting, to kind of address those. I would also mention that so far for the year-to-date numbers of 5 months, we are 2% above the prior year, so slightly above the prior year, but we're actually about 5% below the budget. And what really happened last year is towards the end of the fiscal year, those last 3 months, our sales tax revenue came in down more than it had been the previous year. So it was hard for us to anticipate and know exactly when we submitted the budget, the numbers to budget and estimate for, because we didn't know that we were going to have some of those numbers towards the end that were lower. And so that has created a little bit of a challenge for us, but we're working on it. And so just make you aware of that. Our recreation, arts, and parks tax, that's our what we call our wrap tax. It's also based on sales tax revenue, so you expect it to pretty much track very similarly to our sales tax. See if this is going to go now. Oh, there we go. Just needed a couple clicks. Okay, so development services, we have been trending, and as I looked at it for the 6-month number, we're pretty much right on budget. Earlier in the year, we were actually a little ahead of budget, but once again, that's our building permits and things related to construction from our development services department. Parks and recreation, we've been looking at it, monitoring it closely. We actually are tracking a little bit below what we anticipated with the budget, but we've got our parks and rec team looking at it and reviewing that, and once again looking, if needed be, to do some self-balancing. If you look at franchise fees, those tend to come in sometimes the timing is a little different. It shows that we're significantly under budget, but I don't anticipate. We really think that by the time the end of the year rolls out, that's going to be okay. Justice court revenue, we are above budget. We were above budget last year. And so those have been some positive trends, which we think is good. What really happened with the justice court is for a couple of years, particularly during COVID, the state put some mandates on when we could operate and what we could do. And those really impacted our ability to operate. But since those mandates have been lifted, our revenues have responded, and we've been doing much better and been above our expectations. And this is just kind of the overall general fund summary, and just kind of gives you a high-level overview of where we're running with our revenues and expenses. From a simplistic standpoint, you would look at that and expect to be roughly about 25%, because that's a quarter of the year. It shows us at 21%, but some of those items, I would say we're not really off 4%, but we are, as I shared, down a certain percentage. And then the expenditures, you can see you're at 24, which is about exactly where you would expect to be. This shows appropriations that have occurred during the quarter. And once again, there's really not very much money that was appropriated out of fund balance for the first quarter. There was some ARPA money, which is money that we had already received that we were just using for water conservation efforts. And then there was a post reimbursement similar to what was discussed earlier today in the work session. And those are And that's it. So we really didn't appropriate very much money in the first quarter. And then this just gives you kind of an overall view of our innovation fund, which is a great fund, which gives our departments an incentive to be innovative, to look at technology and find ways. And we offer those once a year through our through administration, through innovation. And the council's been very informed and aware of that. And we've come to the council on many occasions and kind of shared some of the things that have been done through that fund. The library, much of their revenue comes from property tax, which we typically get in November. And so you get a better indication after November, but we anticipate and expect those to be within budget. And then our golf course, I would just mention that golf course has been just since the new renovations, the new holes that have been redesigned, continues to be a star performer. We've even had some weather challenges last year, and it still came in above budget. And as you can see for the first quarter, very strong. And so we're excited about things that are happening at the golf course. As far as our different enterprise funds, I would just encourage you to go through and review. And if you have any questions, but I'm not going to really take the time to go through each one of those, but I am happy to answer any questions from the council on the quarterly report. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any questions for John? Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right, as indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and your city of residence, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. So anyone who's here for just general public comment, you're welcome to come up now. Hey, Eric.
Hi, my name is Eric Chase. I wanted to just make a quick comment on something you guys talked about in the work meeting earlier regarding the temple and their plans for when you vacate the street. And I know they mentioned it in the meeting today, but they said at their plans, they're adding 1,000 parking spaces to the new temple grounds.
No,
And
they're not adding.
yeah, so if you go on Google Earth right now, you can count how many parking spaces there are. There's about 620 between the two parking lots, the one on both sides of the street. According to the design review docs they submitted, they're going to have 1,493 new parking spaces, or not new parking, total parking spaces on their property. And that's an additional 152 on-street parking spaces they're getting. So they're building 1,000 new additional parking spaces compared to what they already have now. And I think that's just a ridiculous number that we would vacate this city property to only go to parking and more to parking, especially because the church is opening new temples that are going to take away from the patronage. They're opening the Orem temple. They're building a temple in Heber. And so I think that if all they're using this extra space for is parking, that's not a good deal for us as a city. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. We will look into that. Any more public comment? All right, we'll move on to our action agendas. We have an applied motion on a resolution consenting to a board and commission's appointment. And this will be presented by the mayor, Michelle Kafusi.
Chair McKay and Vice Chair Whipple and members of the Municipal Council, I am recommending the following appointment to Provo City's Library Board as indicated and submit it herewith for the Council's advice and consent. This is such an easy one. It's Rachel Whipple. Councilor Whipple has served as a member of various city committees and on the boards of local nonprofit organizations prior to her seat on the Municipal Council. Councilor Whipple will be appointed to the vacant term left by Councilor Ellsworth on the Library Board with the term ending December 31st, 2025. And just talking to her briefly before the meeting, she's just proud to say she recently renewed her library card. So with that said, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for the mayor? All right, thank you. Any council discussion on this matter? All right, let's take a vote. Councilor Bogdan.
Yes.
Councilor Christensen.
Yes.
Councilor Garrett.
Yes.
Councilor Handley.
Yes, Counselor Whipple is a reader. I can verify that.
Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple.
So feels weird to vote for myself, but yes.
And that's unanimous. All right, an implied motion on a resolution approving the appropriation of $119,000 in the general fund for a mid-year market adjustment for firefighters. This was presented by Daniel Softly, who is our Human Resources Division Director.
Thank you, council members. Always a pleasure to come and present to you. I'm here requesting $119,000 of an appropriation for some pay adjustments for our paramedic classifications in our fire department. I'm here as a result of recruitment pressures that we as a city are feeling in the paramedic area. There have, over the last several years, I was looking at our kind of a historical breakdown of our staffing in the fire department as far as paramedics. And for a long time, we had only paramedics, and we had maybe one out of our 70 firefighters who was an EMT. Now we have about 20% of our firefighters who are EMTs. And so we're looking to, obviously, and we're not the only agency that does that, but it means that the competition for people who are certified paramedics is pretty intense. And so we've looked at, or my office has looked at kind of where we are in the market, and that brings us tonight to kind of ask for this appropriation. Essentially the paramedic market considerations that are moving this request is, number one, is to adjust our top of our pay grade. We've done a comparison against almost all the other fire agencies in Utah, and ours is a little low, and so we want to adjust that up by a grade. And then the other next thing that we look at is our starting pay needs an adjustment and advancement through the pay range. So essentially how you become a paramedic and then how you advance to their career series once they get hired on. Currently our checkpoints where we hit ours is a little bit lagging from what others are, particularly a strong competitor in Utah County. And we want to make sure that we, when someone is looking at both of our agencies, they give serious consideration to ours. So the remedy that I'm proposing tonight is increase our starting pay by 5%, increase the top of our pay range by 5%, and then implement an intermediate classification and boost actual pay. So 5% for our entry level, 10% for those who qualify for this intermediate classification, and then up to 10% for those who are at the senior and our master paramedic levels. That will put us in a very competitive spot and gives us our fair share of the paramedic candidates that are out there. This request totals $119,000 through the end of this fiscal year. And then the annual cost for that, obviously it's an ongoing cost, will need to be accounted for in the budget moving forward. Over the course of the total year, you're looking at an increased cost of about $260,000 to $270,000 because we are slightly past our mid-year. So any questions?
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel? Becky Bogdan.
Yeah.
I think my question's more for finance for John Borgett. I'm 100% supportive of this, but my problem lies with where's the money going to come from perpetually? I mean, we don't go out and buy a new car without knowing we have the income to do it. And the answer that we were given in work meeting when I asked it was, well, all of the pay just comes into one pot and then we start cutting things. And so as I was thinking about it, I was more concerned about what exactly are we cutting? What is not important enough to be in the budget that we're cutting? So I just want to make sure that we are looking at this and saying, okay, this is going to be sufficiently funded in the years and we're not cutting anything that's really critical. So my question lies is, where is the money going to come from perpetually?
Okay. John, you want to address that?
First of all, Councilman Bogdan, I think you bring up a really good question, because one of the things that we feel is essential when we go through the budget process as we look at budget recommendations is, are they one-time costs or are they recurring costs? And they're two different animals, and particularly reoccurring is something that commits you going forward. So I think it's a really good question. One of the things I would just share with you as we go through the budget process, we have lots of those kind of decisions that we face, on what items are the most important, how do we fund. For example, we have increases every year on medical insurance. We also have a situation where we have step increases for employees that are with the city and doing their job and are awarded a merit increase. We do market adjustments each year as Daniel Softly goes in and does a review of all of our wages to make sure that we're competitive. And so as we start and go through that budget process, we go through and determine what those costs are. We review what our anticipated revenues are, and what the projected, what there's increases, what we can anticipate and expect. And then when we get to the end, we compare in the general fund those anticipated revenues with the expenses based on all the information that we have, which include these factors and things that have changed and would include this proposed budget appropriation. And then if there's a difference, if it's a negative difference, then we have to go in and try to make what, to our best decision, is what I would call smart cuts or smart reductions, or maybe even in certain situations, eliminate services that we feel like may not be as critical as other services. And so it's a very difficult, not length process, but it's something that we do each year, and we are right now in starting the process. We've been going through and identifying revenues based on what we're seeing this year in the market, as well as what we anticipate would happen next year. And we've already submitted to our departments the payroll information that they're starting to review. And we also have situations where we have employees that we have what's called a career series, and we have employees that maybe are progressing and advancing in their abilities, are providing much more benefits to the city. And so in certain situations, we approve those career series advancements and they go into the component too. So as far as me being able to answer and tell you exactly where that would come from, I really can't tell you, but I can tell you that we would take this into account, and it would be part of what we would need to consider and look at for the fiscal year 25, which we're working on now, and going forward.
Do you have an idea of what that would be instead of just a specific?
As far as how we would pay for it?
Yeah.
Well, my hope and anticipation would come from anticipated revenues. And we have, of course, sales tax revenue we've been talking about, which right now we're seeing we had a good November, but we're down overall for the year, so to speak. We also have property taxes that come from growth. There's a component, not a lot, but there's a component that come from growth. We have interest revenues. We have all of our other types of revenues, and overall, how the overall economy goes, where the growth comes from. And so as far as specifically, it would come from one of those areas or from areas where we may have to make some cuts or reductions.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we're hoping that it comes from the revenues so that we don't have to cut. And that's what we're projecting right now, is that we're going to just take it from the additional revenues so we don't have to cut services.
That's what we hope. Yes. But one of the things that we have been committed to and we've done every year since I've been here, is when we come to the council, we deliver a balanced budget, meaning to the general fund, meaning that our revenues in the general fund match our expenses. And we try, as we have discussions and meet with the council and we deliver the budget, that we go through and give you kind of a peek at each department, what the costs are, what the recommendations are, how we were able to balance the budget, and then the council can decide whether they want to support that or whether they want to recommend some changes or do things a little differently. And then in June, we have a recommendation to have the budget adopted, or if there's a recommendation to increase property taxes, then that official budget isn't approved until August.
So those potential cuts will actually be presented to us within your budget presentations?
It's all part of what we deliver to the council, yes.
So everything that you would consider cutting is delivered to the council as well?
Yeah, what we try to do is we provide to you what the expenditures are that we have included in the budget. And then if there's questions or detail that's recommended on what's changed or why did this go down or why did this go up, then we typically do that as the departments make their presentations and there's questions there. And then if there's specific questions to finance or administration, we welcome those questions.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
All right, thank you, John. Any other questions for Daniel or John? Counselor Whipple.
So I just wanted to ask about the cost of not doing this. I understand that it costs quite a bit to train our paramedics and everything. How much are we investing in each one of these paramedics?
It's roughly the costs breakdown. Let me just grab my sheet. But there's a couple of factors that go into it whenever you have to train an EMT. There's the tuition costs. So they have fire academies that go through the paramedic school. And I believe that cost is about $13,000 to send them through that. Then you have staffing coverage costs. And so as you take your newly hired EMT, and once they finally get a spot in the program, you now have to cover them when they're not working. And so once you do that, I think the total cost is upwards of about $30,000 to $40,000 that you invest into an EMT. And so to become a paramedic. And so it makes having a certified paramedic very valuable because they can be on the truck from day one with all full services. They don't have the tuition. And so what we're trying to protect against as far as, where we're vulnerable is, they go through the EMT school to become the paramedic school to become paramedics. And then, they maybe have a better offer from another agency. So maybe we put them through the school and then they go somewhere else who can get a better offer, which is why it's important we monitor how they progress through that particular pay grade. We want to make sure that our acceleration is equal to that.
So we want to avoid a situation we're investing and paying for training and then we lose them before we get to realize the benefit of that training.
That is 100% correct.
And even if we're not paying for their training, there's just a cost for turnover, like getting new people in, hiring them, and everything else.
Correct.
So if we can keep our people for longer periods of time, we get a cost savings.
Correct. Yeah.
So it would make more sense to do this kind of investment in our people so they'll stay with us so that we can reduce turnover. Like financially, that makes more sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Have we considered doing any sort of contract restrictions so that if we've paid for their training, that they have to reimburse the city a certain amount if they leave in a period of time?
Yes. Throughout the state, I mean, that's a concept that has been in place for, a few decades, actually. And you can they're sometimes not as enforceable as easily as we would like them to be. But it is certainly a discussion that we have, particularly if we send them through paramedic school and then they decide to leave, 2 months afterwards, that's certainly leaves a bad taste in our mouth, and it's something that we try to avoid. And so we have those discussions. It's a matter of how enforceable that is.
So it seems to be a better policy to have a better carrot than it is to try to beat them with the stick.
Generally speaking, yes.
All right, thank you.
Always well said by Councilor Whipple.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Councilor Christensen?
Now, you went through a lot more detail in the work session than we've gone through here. And just for the benefit of people listening, this isn't about a windfall for the EMT. This is about staying competitive with neighboring cities who offer a fairly good differential. Could you just speak to that?
Sure. So as I went through, and I have access to quite a bit of pay data through other cities, budget documents, their pay schedules, things that we also publish, online for residents to see. And as we were going through, as I was doing my analysis, in particular, one of the larger competitors in Utah, we not only lagged behind from the starting pay, we were a little bit below at the top, but probably most importantly, the thing that caught my attention more is they had accelerated pay growth. So they have a career series very similar to ours, where you hire on as a paramedic with, say, no experience. And then once you gain certain experience, you move to a different classification level. And as you gain certifications and gain experience, you become a more valuable employee. You move through this career series to the ultimate goal of becoming a master paramedic. And a master paramedic is exactly what it sounds like. This is a highly trained individual who can handle all the situations, has all these certifications. As I looked at how we compared to those, and this is true with, police officers and firefighters, basically public safety in the last few years, other agencies have been saying, we need to be competitive as well. And so, whereas it used to be change was a little bit slower in that area, it's not the same anymore. And so when I looked at that, whereas, maybe a year ago, I felt like we were very competitive, given those considerations, and I watched, how they progressed, we were upwards of 10% behind as you saw how we progressed compared to others.
Yeah.
And so that's why the focus is in on that middle period or that middle section, moving them further along and giving those other newer paramedics an opportunity to accelerate quicker. Because if you look at ours compared to others, it would look less desirable.
Yeah. So. Thank you.
Councilor Bogdan.
Okay, Danielle, I'm sitting here whispering back and forth because I really want to get an answer. I feel like the answers I'm getting up here are not the answers.
Okay.
So traditionally, like my husband is a school teacher. If
Okay.
they were to pay for his schooling, he'd have to pay back 5 years of service. Do we have that here? If we pay for a firefighter or a police officer, they have to do a payback of 5 years for that schooling that we do give them, pay for?
On a paramedic, I don't know if we have an actual contract. We have something very similar to our tuition reimbursement program in the city. We can send someone help pay for them for school, and our agreement with them up front is that if they leave within a certain period of time, they have to give us a prorated amount back. Now, in that situation, we have a little bit more of an advantage where we can withhold leave balances to pay because they have a signed contract. Ultimately, though, if they don't have those, they could still walk. And then it becomes an issue of whether or not we want to take, a former employee to court to recover those costs. So I'm not aware of any, and maybe Chief Hedman would be better. Do we have any signed agreements currently? Yeah. So we don't have it on the actual paramedic school.
Do we know why we don't have that? Is that not standard in the industry, or?
As I said, I think there are some that do it. It is a concept that's been kicked around for a long time. What I've learned from other agencies is that generally it's unenforceable unless you decide to spend extra money to go after it in court. I don't think we've had that issue come up very often, but I would be remiss to say that we haven't had it before. So.
Thank you.
All right, no other questions? Okay, we're going to open this item up for public comment. If there's any public comment for this specific item. All right, we'll do council discussion. Any discussion? All right, let's take a vote on the implied motion. Councillor Christensen,
Yes.
Councillor Garrett,
Yes.
Councillor Handley,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban,
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple,
Yes.
Councillor Bogdan.
Yes.
That is unanimous, 7-0. All right, I made a mistake earlier and we missed a public comment that was online. So we would like to welcome Lindley Richards to make public comment. And Lindley, if you could please just say, well, I said your name, so that counts. Lindley Richards, and just say what the city you live in, please.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Lindley Richards. So I live in Provo City at King Henry Apartments. I just wanted to make a brief comment on towing in the city of Provo. So I was towed on December 3rd, 2023, and the towing company was in violation of several city ordinances, such as I have a video recording, I have a voice recording of the towing company refusing to provide me with a copy of the contract that allows them to patrol lots and tow without the other requirements that are typically required of towing companies in Provo. In addition, they didn't give me my consumer bill of rights until after I had paid, which is also against Provo City ordinance related to towing. So I've been in contact with Sergeant Dupay of the Provo City Police Department, but it's been about 2 weeks, going on 3, since I've had any communication from him. I've left a couple voicemails. Provo City Police have acknowledged that the towing company that I'm dealing with was in violation of Provo City ordinance. Now Provo City Police have the contract, yet they still won't release that contract to me because they think it's risky, despite the fact that it's part of Provo City ordinance. In addition, if a towing company is in violation of Provo City ordinance in relation to towing, then they're not a preferred towing company and they're not legally allowed to patrol. I work with the Utah State Legislature. I've read through every ordinance and every administrative code and every Utah code related to towing, and this is a real issue. So I would appreciate any communication or feedback or advice that the council members have for me on this issue. Thank you.
Hey, Lindley, through the chat feature, could you please share with us your phone number and your email?
I will. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to go on to the next agenda item. An applied motion on ordinance adjusting the common boundary between Provo and Orem along 2000 South in Orem. And this will be presented by Gordon Haight, our Engineering Division Director.
Public hearings for 3 boundary adjustments with the city of Orem. And so tonight we're going to close those public hearings and give the city council an opportunity to vote on each of these items. So the first one is a boundary adjustment along 200 South if you're in Orem, or 200 North if you're in Provo. It has also includes a detention basin that Orem uses as part of their storm drain facility. And so our recommendation has been to turn that road completely over to Orem, make that part of their city. We have no homes that front it, and so it makes sense for just one city to take care of it. Let me know if you have any questions and we can answer that.
Any questions for Gordon? All right, thanks, Gordon.
Okay.
We will open up this item up for public comment. All right, council discussion. Any discussion on this one? Councillor Whipple.
So we've had this long period of public hearing. Has the public said anything about this?
On none of these items have we received any public comment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, a vote on the implied motion? Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Handley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan,
Yes.
and Counselor Christensen.
Yes.
Right, that's unanimous, 7-0. And we're going to hear again from Gordon on an applied motion, an ordinance adjusting the common boundary between Provo and Orem to accommodate a new residential development near the intersection of University Avenue in Provo and 800 North in Orem.
All right, this is associated with the River District development near the Provo River. There is a parcel of ground that is very difficult to be sewered in Orem. And there's some logistics why this residential development should be in one city or the other, in the sense that you'll have these homes right across the street from each other. They'll be going to a different school district, voting in different, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's good to have two government entities that cooperate. So ultimately, those people that live there aren't going to see a physical boundary that divides neighborhoods. Orem has agreed to this and has worked with Provo really well. And so they've already had their closure of the public hearing. So they're just waiting for Provo to do theirs. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Gordon. Any questions? No, okay. I'm glad that we were able to work this one out. We'll open this item up for a public hearing. Anyone want to comment on this item? All right, council discussion? All righty, we'll do a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Handley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan,
Yes.
Counselor Christensen,
Yes.
and Counselor Garrett.
Yes.
And that's unanimous, 7-0. Next, an applied motion on ordinance adjusting the common boundary between Provo and Orem to accommodate a new wait. Sorry, guys. Was that the right one? No, I just did that one.
This is the right one.
I'm moving to the next one. An ordinance concurring with Utah County on the common boundary between Provo and Orem near the intersection of 1030 East in Orem and 2250 North in Provo.
The reason the term concurrent is there is that a number of years ago, Orem and Provo both passed ordinances to make this the common boundary, and we show this as the common boundary, but the county doesn't believe it's the common boundary. So this document is to bring the county in line with what the two cities believe is our boundary. So it's moving. The reason this was done is Provo or Orem has a lift station, and the county believes part of that lift station is in Provo and part of it in Orem. We believe it's all in Orem, and Orem believes it's all in Orem. So this just makes us all believe the same thing.
That's great. All right. Any questions for Gordon? We'll open this item up for a public hearing. Any public comment on this item? All right. Council discussion. We're cleaning up a lot of stuff with Orem today. That's great. All right. We'll call for a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan.
Yes.
Counselor Christensen.
Believing the same thing must be a good thing. Yes.
Counselor Garrett.
Yes.
And Counselor Handley.
Yes.
All right, and that passes unanimously, 7-0. Next, an implied motion on ordinance amending Provo City Code Titles 6, 14, and 15 to make various technical updates and corrections. And this will be presented by Aaron Ardmore.
Okay, thank you, Council. So what we have here from Development Services, we've kept track of code issues, cleanup, bad references, unclear code sections throughout the calendar year of 2023. And that's what's before you now. We took these through Planning Commission, all except for section 6.32, which is not regulated by the Planning Commission. But on the screen, you'll see kind of the sections that we have proposed to correct or to adjust, and kind of the reasons why. So just quickly running through those, food truck rules, regulations that the city have been overridden by the state and the legislature last year. So we are amending that code to comply with the new rules from the Utah state. Chapter 14.14E is known as the CMU, Campus Mixed Use Zone. And there's a lot of references throughout Title 14 and 15 to that zone. But the title of the zone has been problematic from day one. Anytime someone has a proposal through that zone, they expect it to be a mixed-use project when that wasn't the intent of the zone. So we're clarifying that by renaming it to campus residential. So it's just a simple name shift through all those sections. The next three are clarifying or correcting references. The second from the bottom, section 14.3, 4.140. That still says that the planning commission shall approve flag lots, but many years ago, the city changed rules to allow staff to approve subdivisions, which would imply that we approve the flag lots in those subdivisions, but the wording was kind of giving people the wrong idea. So we're correcting that. And then the very last one is when we adopted the open space preservation recreation zone a couple years back, setbacks for buildings was left out. And that's a pretty important thing in some situations where some of these pretty significant parks have pretty significant buildings, and we want those set back from the street and view corridors and clear vision corners, things like that. We want it to be safe. So we're putting those back in there, and those are just the standard setbacks that were part of parks when it was in the public facilities zone. So not really a substantial change, but probably the most substantial that you'll see in this packet. And I'm happy to answer any questions on these, but that's all I have prepared.
We love that you guys take the time to clean this up and just keep track of it over the year. That's really easy. Any questions for Aaron? All right, we will open this item up for public comment. All right, council discussion. Okay, we'll take a vote on the implied motion. Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Bogdan?
Yes.
Councilor Christensen?
Yes.
Councilor Garrett?
Yes.
Councilor Handley?
Yes.
And Councilor Hoban?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously 7-0. All right, this is the last one of the night. An implied motion on ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 1.04 acres of real property generally located at 4981 North Edgewood Drive from the village at Riverwoods from SDP1 Zone to SC3 Zone. And this will be presented by Aaron Ardmore.
Okay. So we went over this a little bit in study meeting today about the development plan here for office building. The reason it's in front of you in this hearing is because you see the two addresses there, 4951 and 4981 North. 4981 is still within the SDP1 zone where the building you could see goes across both parcels. So the proposal to get this office building built would require both parcels to be in the same zone. A plat would be coming next to combine those, and then parking and access agreements with the adjacent parcels. Now, all these parcels up here in the Riverwoods are owned by the same property owner, which makes it easy to manage the parking and to grant those access easements for this office building. So the rezone is to, like the notice says, to the SC3 zone. It was noted today that this site plan was important enough to the council to wrap into a development agreement. We'd be happy to amend the ordinance. I don't think that language is in the ordinance as written that I prepared for this, but we'd be happy to amend that to add that line about the development grant being agreed between the developer and the mayor. And as this has been a proffer through the submittal, we could put that into that development agreement and get that done after this hearing. I believe that's all I have on this, unless there's any additional questions.
Councilor Whipple?
So you were able to talk to the developer and they did proffer?
I wasn't able to talk to the developer, but from the submittals that come into our review through the file, those are themselves proffers. They're proffering that they will build this. They'll have to sign it if they want to move forward with the rezone. So that's something that we could put in it's just a simple attachment to the standard template for development agreement and have them sign it.
If you could do that and certainly compliment them because the way they've set up that space between the building and the trail is really lovely and inviting, and we would like them to know that we appreciate that.
No, yeah, it's going to be a great amenity to the area. I agree.
Any other questions for Aaron? Okay, and they're not here tonight, the developer.
I don't see them.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so how does it work? If we vote on this tonight, does that mean it's still contingent on the signage?
Yes, whenever there's a development agreement as part of the
Okay.
motion, the zone's not actually put on the map until the development agreement is signed and recorded at the county.
Now, with that development agreement, could we put in a clause that if they want to make changes, it's possible, but they'd have to come back to us or something? Because
Yeah.
maybe they have a better change. They don't, when they start building it and realize they need to do something, you know what I mean? Because I don't want to like take away options that could be good for them and the city
Right.
in the end.
Yeah, and that's always the case with the development agreement.
Okay.
They could come in and back to the council and ask for
Okay.
it to be amended.
Great. All right. Well, we'll open this item up for public. Do you have a question? Okay, Councillor Whipple.
Gary, are we doing this properly?
Yeah, I think we're back to the implied motion with his answer, so I think we're fine.
Okay, thanks.
Well, wait, the implied motion didn't have a development agreement mentioned though. Don't we have to add that?
Yes. So the ordinance that I put into on base didn't have that line about development agreement. There's a separate subsection that we would want to add.
Yes, we have to do amended motion.
That's, if it's not in there, yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right. We'll open this item up for public comment and then we'll discuss. Any public comment? All right. Any discussion? Councillor Christensen.
Yeah, that river access is so critical to the neighbors. I don't feel comfortable. I mean, I love the project. I think this is something that this should go through, but that's such a critical piece. I just wonder if we actually get that in writing first and revisit it. So that I think your points were well taken. If they have an enhancement, they come back. But I would hate to see something go sideways on this when the neighbors feel so strongly, as do I, about the riverfront.
It can't go sideways if we say that. Bill, do you want to speak to that? We can safely do it.
The trail protection and access has been a big issue to the neighbors and to the staff since this project was very first proposed. And it's come up over and over again. And that's why the developer's been so respectful of that. Because of the things that Mr. Ardmore suggested, I feel like the city is protected. We will not allow the zoning to move forward until the development agreement is signed and it has in it what we feel needs to be in it to protect the trail. So I feel like we're safe to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any other discussion? All right. Okay. So we need to make an amended motion. So I'd like to make an amended motion. An ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 1.04 acres of real property generally located at 4981 North Edgewood Drive from the village at Riverwoods from SDP1 zone to SC3 zone based on a signed development agreement on the proffered documents. Would you like to make the amended motion, Gary?
I don't think that I can, but I was going to suggest saying contingent upon the signing of an acceptable development agreement, language to that effect.
Okay. So let's do the whole original applied motion contingent on the signing of a development agreement based on the proffered documents.
Second.
Thank you, Gary.
I just have a question.
Councillor Handley.
Yeah, so I thought we were not allowed to ask for a development agreement. Thought that has to be offered.
They're saying because they.
But you're saying it's the equivalent of what they've already offered.
Ryan Jones and I've had this discussion many times. When they submit an application, when they submit a plan and show that plan to us, that plan is a proffer and we can memorialize that in a development agreement without any consent from the owner, specific consent, because that plan itself is his consent or her consent.
Okay.
We're not adding new conditions that aren't already in the plan that they've offered. I think that's the distinction. Okay, Becky.
Counselor Bogdan.
My question comes from, we also had the discussion about allowing that to be public space or public access to some of that space. How would we do that?
It's already public, that trail.
The trail's public. Were we looking at some of it, like, yeah, like the plaza?
Well, technically the plaza is their private property, but I don't think they're gonna.
Yeah, so there's a public access easement along the river for the trail. But once you cross over, then you're in the Riverwoods private property. So that would be
That'll
something
be
we'd want to
up to
talk to the
the-
owner about.
That will be up to the owner. If I would think unless there's a problem, they'll generally keep it open, but there's no guarantee of that.
And that would already be the case with the property as it is right now. There's the trail and then there's a parking lot next to it. If they wanted to, they could close off the parking lot, but people could still use the trail.
Okay, we're now going to vote on the amended motion. Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor Bogdan.
Yes.
Counselor Christensen.
Yes.
Counselor Garrett.
Yes.
Counselor Handley.
Yes.
Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes. So that passes unanimously 7-0. All right. If there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent. And I can't believe we had so many spectators for so long. Thanks, guys.